This is Oriah, and I'm the founder of United Starseed Connections group on Facebook. And I have the esteemed pleasure of being able to interview one of our star seeds. Her name is Nicky Bridges from the UK. Hi, Nicky.
Hi.
And
lovely to be here.
Thank you. And you know, it is very, very special that she's here with us today because it is based on a couple posts that I did on sexuality and sensuality within the starseed community, quote unquote, the spiritual community, and how that relates to us as individuals. And I was having some sort of my own kind of birth in my own sexuality and sensuality, allowing myself to be very open, and made a music video and some pictures and some just talking about it more openly. And it was a big deal for me. And Nicky really just stood out in the way that she was talking about it with me, and she really resonated and understood everything I was doing. She's been there. She had a lot to say about it, and it was really an exciting conversation. So I said, I have to interview you. So here we are. So here we are. So Nicky, I want to ask you, you mentioned a little bit about where this all began, your understanding of sexuality, also your childhood, because that is where the setup occurred of how it played out, how you saw yourself as a sexual being. So why don't you take us back to the beginning?
So my parents divorced when I was 6, and I was brought up by my father. And he remarried to my stepmother, and my grandmother was very much a maternal presence in the home as well. She was a very, very important member of our family for all of us as well, and my sisters. And my father was a very successful businessman. He traveled a lot. He was a worldwide traveler in his business. He was an engineer. And so he wasn't present very much, you know, so I was in a very maternal household as well, you know, lots and lots of women. And definitely, you know, I was awake as a child. I used to have star beings around my bed, etc. So I was very much an awakened kid. I didn't know what to do with it, but, you know, I was there talking to star beings around my bed. And then when I got into my teens, I left home at 19. So I think you and I have had similar paths actually, yeah. But I left home at a young age, you know, and I definitely felt on that journey of discovery of who I was as a young woman going out into the world and wanting to discover, yeah, absolutely, my sexuality. And I was a hairdresser for many years, so a hairstylist, maybe you call it a hairstylist in the States. And what I really loved about that, apart from being a creative being, was, you know, you have to touch people every day. Yes. You know, it's a very essential part of your life every single day. And I really learned to talk to people in that job as well, but also not to be afraid of touching people, because that was my role. And, you know, you learn so much about people and interacting with people in that way because it's so intimate.
Right.
You know, and it's so important. You know, a good haircut makes someone's day, doesn't it? And a bad haircut ruins the weeks ahead, doesn't it? You know, so it was, you know, I felt actually quite a responsibility doing that sometimes as well. But yeah, it really, you know, being in the beauty industry really brought me in touch with, you know, myself as a woman, looking at other women. I did men as well, but looking at other women and how they felt about themselves. And we'd have lots of girly chats on the salon floor, you know, and talking about lots of stuff. So that was a really big, you know, introduction to me as a young woman. And I can't say anything stands out that was really influential, but I was very aware, you know, of how they looked at themselves and how they felt about themselves, and they would tell me their stories. So yeah, that was really a big first part.
How did you feel about yourself during that time period as far as your own sexuality and sensuality?
sometimes it just felt really good and really exciting, you know, and I think actually, you know, my own haircuts had a lot to do with it because I would change my look quite often. You know, I'd have some really wacky haircuts, you know, and really enjoy that reinvention. You know, when I got fed up with how I looked, I'd go, oh, I'll have a new hairstyle, you know, and change my clothes a little bit. So I really enjoyed that part of my life until through a series of events, I met a woman who came into my life quite unexpectedly. It was just in a roundabout way. And she really helped put me on my spiritual path. And I used to attend some events with her and a group of other people and start meditating and learning about different ways of using energy and working with energy. And that was my first really big introduction to that.
Right.
And
did you ever get married and have children?
yes, but not until much later. So I'm 56.
Oh,
so I didn't meet my husband until I was 34.
okay.
So I had this whole other life before I met him. And yeah, I had a long-term boyfriend before I met my husband. And that was one of those life-changing relationships.
Did you feel free in your own sensuality and sexuality with those relationships? Did you feel expressed?
With my long-term boyfriend before I met my husband, yes. It was one of those kind of tricky relationships. It was very on and off, and it went on for about 8 years. But it was a very intimate relationship, and by that I mean it was a very sexual relationship. So it was something that really pulled us together, was our sexual relationship. But you know, it just faded into being. And then I met my husband when I was training to be a counselor and psychotherapist. I met my husband on that course. And I really felt, wow, I'm meeting like this conscious man who's gonna really understand, you know, deeper parts of himself and be able to express himself in that way. And that was a really exciting prospect for me, because I'd learned quite a lot of stuff by then. I was 34 and I'd been already on my spiritual journey, doing lots and lots of learning and also practicing my spirituality as well. So I used to read tarot cards and I used to give little readings, and I'd already started working with energy, so understanding it in a healing aspect. And I was at that time in my life where I was like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, I've met this man and it's serious, and it got serious very quickly. And within about 8 months of our relationship, I was pregnant with our first child.
Very good.
And so we had a short time to be a couple, you know, and to be in a sexual relationship with one another as well. And it was all good and went really well, and we enjoyed our sexual relationship together. And then I had my first son, and he was a little bit overdue, and I was induced, and nothing happened. And I was about to go home, and all of a sudden I went into this very fast, quick labor. So anybody who's a mum on here, you know, knows about that stuff. And I had something called an episiotomy, which is where they cut you to help the baby come out. And I'm a very small woman, so I'm 5 foot, I'm small, I'm petite. Okay. And they were really worried in the delivery room that I was going to have a problem delivering this baby. And he was overdue, and he was 7 pounds, 8.5. You know, so for a small woman, they were like freaking out. And after that, after having my first son and having that procedure, which was done without anesthesia, it was done as a very shocking kind of emergency measure that wasn't needed. And I didn't realize until sometimes afterwards how in pain I was from that. Not just, I was in slight physical pain, but in the pain of the shock of what had happened, because it felt like quite a violent act that had happened to me when it had taken place.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of years later, along came our second son, and at that point, my libido had nosedived, you know, ended up in the ditch.
That's very common for young or first-time moms. You know,
And you're tired, aren't you? And you're
territory.
exhausted. Yeah. You know, any new mum knows that, don't you? You're tired, you're exhausted, you're, you know, you've got so many other things that you're juggling. So that was really a difficult period for me in my relationship with my husband as well. And I felt that I had no libido. I was tired all the time. I wasn't really interested in having sex. And if I was having sex, I was just having sex for the sake of having sex, you know, just
Right.
felt like I was pleasing my husband. Yeah, you know, it was like, okay.
And you didn't feel sexy at that time.
No.
I mean,
No.
that's very impossible.
No, I didn't feel the time.
Babies. Yeah.
I didn't. And I didn't, you know, I mentioned I'm sort of a small, petite woman, and I literally didn't put on, you know, I put on 20 odd pounds or whatever in my pregnancies, just normal weight, lost it all immediately. So my actual body image was okay. I wasn't overweight or anything like that, but I didn't feel good, internally good about myself at all. I just felt tired, exhausted, no libido, not interested in sex, not interested in my own sensuality, because, you know, being a mom, your children, especially when your children are small, they're just an extension of you, aren't they?
Oh,
And
yeah.
you know, that's how I felt. I didn't feel a sexual or sensual person at all. That just absolutely left.
And you don't really have a lot of alone time, and you don't have a lot of time to spend on yourself. So yeah, it's a whole rearrangement of how you even see yourself, because you're now taking in and including others. So yeah, it takes its toll on women. You know, husbands get disappointed when the mothers have their children and they're no longer the sex pot. They're no longer, you know, delivering the way they used to. And it's the children will do that to you. So
they do. And I, you know, it took me a long time as well. And I think for, you know, in my case, my husband and I, you know, we hadn't been together very long before we had our first child. So we hadn't built the foundation of that relationship and what exploring that real intimacy was between us. We just didn't have that passage of time to do that. You know, all of a sudden I'm having a baby, and then I'm really having a baby. It's real, you know, and that was really tough. And it took, I think my older son must have been about 7 or 8, and my younger one about 3, before I really thought, wow, you know, I'm coming back to myself. And you know, my older one was off at school, and the other one was off at nursery, and I was doing, you know, working and doing my own thing and working on my spiritual self,
like yourself again, right?
Yeah. And yeah. And it was wonderful to come back to myself. It was really important. And I started to dress slightly differently. And yeah, I'm going to put some makeup on. I'm going to feel good about myself. I'm going to go to the hairdresser, etc. And do all of those kind of self-nurturing things that were important to me. You know, and pampering myself and looking after myself. And absolutely, you know, my husband really enjoyed that, because he was like, oh, look, I'm getting back this, you know, sexy woman again, you know, that's coming back into her more feminine, sensual self. And that felt really good. And we were able to reconnect our relationship, you know, in a better way through that time. But then shortly, that lasted, I don't know, about 18 months, because I went through my menopause really early at 45.
That is really early.
Yeah, and I didn't know that was happening to me until one day I just woke up and I thought, oh, I don't feel good. You know, I really don't feel good. And it just kind of hit me like a train, just crash into me so intensely, and it went on for 3 years.
Yes.
And it really impacted my life in a really big way.
Now, I hear that you can take birth control to handle some of those emotional surges. I don't know, or those hormonal surges. Have you heard of that?
I don't know. I mean, I've never taken
My
birth.
gynecologist told me that.
Okay,
So
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
I was very interested in that.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, so I know I mean, I know I haven't started menopause myself, but I'm in the early stages, and I'm very sensitive. So I pick up on every little slightest nuance, and I could tell immediately that that was what was happening. And I went to see a doctor immediately, and they told me that, you know, if I want to, I can go on birth control to slow things down or just get them under control, so it's not so out of control. But yeah, I know I have a taste of what you experienced, and that was enough for me. I mean, it's serious. It's
serious stuff.
It's
there are so many symptoms that come with it as well, and I think that's why I felt really discombobulated. You know, I didn't know. You know, I felt tired. I felt drained. You know, apart from my menstrual cycles changing as well, but that didn't really bother me. But
did you cry a lot for anything and get very emotional?
Yes, yeah. Yes. And the thing that really impacted me the most was erratic mood swings.
Yes.
So one minute I'd be absolutely, oh, I'm fine, blah, blah, blah. And the next minute I would be like a raging bull.
Yeah.
And I remember my husband saying to me one morning, "You're really horrible. You're behaving in a really horrible way." And I can remember just turning around to him and looking at him and saying, "Yeah, and you know what? And I don't care." And it didn't come out in that way either. It was very unpleasant. And I remember him looking at me going, "What?" And I was saying, "I don't care. I don't care." And at that point, I took myself, I have a very good acupuncturist, and I took myself to the acupuncturist, and he was like, "It's fine, sit down, let's sort you out." And he said to me, you know, most women, when they're going through their menopause, one of the most common denominators is they simply don't recognize who they are anymore.
Yeah.
And that was such a point of acknowledgement, because I wasn't getting it from my husband, and my children, obviously, you know, young children, and mum is just having it in a bad mood. But it was a real pointer for me. It was one of those moments in life where I've been seen, I've been hurt, someone's going to help. And it was really, really powerful. And I used to go, I'd recommend acupuncture to anyone. You just got to have someone who's good and knows what they're doing, and someone who knows about women's health. But
it's fantastic.
Yeah, hormonal health, absolutely. Yeah. But I used to go sometimes 3 times a week.
That's great. Yes. I mean, that's what's going to keep you balanced.
It did. Yeah. Because it allowed everything in my body that I was experiencing to calm down.
Because it feels like a pressure cooker, and you also have these migraines that come with it, and these hot flashes, and one minute you're burning up and the next minute you're exhausted, and it just is a horrible experience, you know?
It's weird.
Biology can be cruel sometimes, right?
It is. It's just... And I don't think women talk about their pregnancies, don't they? And they talk about their birthing stories. No one talks about the menopause, do they?
No one talks about menopause, no. It's a taboo subject even to this day. Men are, they also feel they're not supposed to be a part of this conversation, but I hope for you men out there, please stay tuned and listen, because you're going to learn for your own spouses and your partners and girlfriends. You need to know what women go through, so you can help them. And if your girlfriend or your female partner is going through something like this, you can be, you know, a support system for her instead of like freaking out and running for the hills.
It's so
Find
true.
out if she's in menopause. Yeah.
It's so true. And, you know, it felt like for me, being premenstrual and pregnant all at the same time, you know, with just all of those hormones mixed together, you know, so that moodiness,
your entire 40s was just nothing but hormones.
In my entire 40s. And I had, you know, my second child at 40. So my first child at 36, 37, and then my second child at 40. So I had that small grace period where I felt normal coming out of pregnancy, coming out of giving birth, and blah blah blah. And then a couple of years grace, and then I went straight into menopause, which was, yeah, absolutely 3
Your
years.
poor body, your poor mind, your
Yeah,
whole
it was
spirit
tough.
was just exhausted.
It was tough. And I remember I'd been in it for a while, my menopause, and I remember just thinking, I am never going to come out of this. I'm
Right.
always going to be this ratty, moody person. And also you get like baby brain with it as well. I couldn't remember stuff. I couldn't focus. And that was what I found the physical symptoms were annoying for me, but my sense of self that I just felt was just leaving me in a very big way. And the psychological effect, the mood swings were the worst because I couldn't control them. Acupuncture helped. I used to take the bush flowers a lot. I used to take woman essence.
Okay, good. I was going to ask. Yeah. The herbs,
Brilliant.
supplements, teas.
Yeah,
All of that.
supplements. Yeah, absolutely. I would treat myself to a massage sometimes. A friend of mine used to give me a bit of reflexology and things like that. And that was all good because it really supported my whole system and made me feel just better about myself. And
Good.
that, I was taking care of myself. So
So,
that was.
did your marriage survive this onslaught of hormones?
No, no.
Oh,
So it was really the beginning of the end of my intimate relationship with my husband, because
it was just
so those yeah, and those mood swings, and everything that I was going through, I wasn't we weren't not getting on, but we weren't getting on either. And also my libido dropped
right,
as well.
right.
And for the first time, the other thing that happened was, for the first time in my life, Oriah, I put on weight.
Oh gosh, at the
And I
worst
put
time.
on weight, and it crept on
Ah,
really slowly. And I
and
didn't know
the
it was
worst time.
happening.
It's at the worst time because you're already not feeling good. You
Yeah,
already are having low self-worth conversations because
yeah,
you don't feel good.
no.
Then
And
you
I
start
put on
gaining
this
weight.
weight, and it crept on like really quickly.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, you go and put your favorite pair of jeans on, and you can't do them up. I'm thinking, I'm not eating anymore that I usually eat, and I don't eat junk. I eat well. I eat healthily. And I was thinking, what's going on? And that went on. That just crept up. So I don't know what you say in the States, but I put on about 1.5 stone, and that's, I don't know, over 20 pounds or so. But it made a difference that I had to change my clothing. I couldn't get my normal clothes on, which was also an absolute deciding factor
So
in.
this is called the spiral. This is when you spiral
Yeah,
completely out.
yeah,
Yeah, and
and,
it's all the body. It's just the
yeah,
body is doing all of this, and you're
yeah,
going along for the ride.
yeah, yeah. And also it made me feel really self-conscious, and I've always felt quite good about my body, and felt quite proud of it. And I'm comfortable in my own skin. But, after I put that weight on, and I just felt fat, frumpy mummy, and all of my self-esteem went out the window. I
Right.
had no feelings of any sensuality, no feelings of any libido. I just felt I was going down this pit, losing myself rapidly, like week by week by week. And it took a long time to come out of it. But then one day it was really interesting, because one day I just woke up and I thought, oh, I feel different. What's going on? I'm feeling just different. This is interesting. And then the next day I went back again, but then a couple of days later I thought, no, hang on a minute, I'm feeling different. It's like when you've had your menstrual cycle, and women feel different because they're in that other part of their 28-day cycle, and all of a sudden they go, oh yeah, I'm feeling good, and it's past, and I can manage myself again. And all of a sudden, within those first couple of weeks, that ended up being every day. And every day I was like, I'm coming out of this pit. and
my
I'm
gosh.
coming back to myself, and wow, I'm
Woo.
kind of like, whoa, how am I going to deal with this? But this is really good. And I didn't believe it at first. You know, I didn't quite believe it at
Incredible.
first.
It's such a good feeling. And,
Oh,
you know,
it's
some people feel
amazing.
that way just in having their spiritual awakening. They can feel that way. They're coming out of this dark pit and then they go into this big opening, or there's like, they feel like themselves again. But people don't realize how much it's all interconnected, how the body, the
So
hormones, the
connected.
spiritual awakening, how it's the pituitary gland, like it's all connected.
It's all
So how
connected.
old were you around the time when you started to feel like you were coming back to yourself?
So I was about 49.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about 49, and that was, you know, good. I was still a little bit weighty then. But I felt better, and
Right.
that was a key for me. And I'd also been really 100% aware of the ascension timeline around that time as well. So around sort of like 2009, 2010.
Mm.
And I've always had a lot of spiritual buddies around me. I feel very blessed. But a couple of my friends and I, we were talking about the ascension timeline, you know, and we're coming into this new age, and the 2012 is coming, and these light codes are going to be coming in, and everything's going to start changing, and we have to get ready, you know. It's like we have to kind of start clearing this stuff and getting in alignment, and all these new light codes are going to come in. So whilst I was going through my menopause, I was also doing that stuff as well. So I was in a really interesting space with myself, because I was going through
About
probably dark night of the soul.
talk about getting intimate with yourself, boy.
Yeah, I'm a deep diver. I'm a deep
Wow.
diver. I'm not afraid
What's
to
your birth
dive deep.
sign?
I'm Virgo
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
My best friend is a Virgo, so I know everything about Virgo. But
So I'm Virgo with Moon in Cancer, but I have
your moon is
Mars in Scorpio.
whoa.
So that
So
Mars
you're
in
very, very
Scorpio drives me to do this deep dive. You know,
yeah.
that's how I always feel. You know, it just drives me, and
Well, the one
I'm
thing
not
about
afraid.
your combination, that three combination is fearless.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's just
I'm
fearless.
fearless. Yeah, yeah. I've been brought into this world to be a warrior. You know, I didn't really think I was here for that, but I am. You know, so
Right.
it's yeah.
Wow. Okay. So at this time, you started to feel better. You were starting to launch into your ascension. You started to feel like the clouds are parting. You can start to see now. You're feeling like yourself more than ever. Now, the marriage was still going on, or did it start to end around that
It
time?
was still it was still going on. It was still going on, and I was working as well. So I'm doing my deep dive spiritually. I'm going through this menopause, and I was working. And I worked as a counsellor in the community. I worked for a mental health charity.
Hmm.
And so I worked in mental health for quite a long time in my own community. And so I had people crying all over me every day as well, you know, dealing with their own stuff as well. So I was in this very just intense period in my life. It was so intense. And yeah, there was no time for me. There was no time for
Right.
who am I as a woman? How am I feeling about myself? Am I feeling sexually attractive?
Was this mostly the spiritual time period where it was mostly metaphysical, the brain, transformation, things like that?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. So the
definitely.
body, anything from the neck down, you're still not focusing on that yet.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So any
I
of you
just
guys
think
that feel bad that you're in that stage, just know it's a stage. That's the
it
good
is.
news. It's a stage. So it's not permanent if you feel like you're dormant. It's just for a time period while you're focusing on other things. But
Absolutely.
so walk us through what happens next.
So yeah, no, it's been such a journey. So I got made redundant from my job all of
Mhm.
a sudden. And I'd been really tuning in to my guides and my angels, and there was a lot of talk about at the time. I was really looking at a lot of the Diana Cooper stuff at the time. Do you know her? Diana Cooper? She's our angel lady here.
Oh, okay.
She's quite well known here.
Okay.
And she's written loads of stuff about the ascension. She's got an amazing
I
library of
have to
work.
check her out. Yes.
Yeah. And she was just talking about all the changes that are coming in, etc., etc. And I was looking at her stuff a little bit and doing some of her amazing meditations, and all sorts of things were happening to me. So I was like connecting in the etherical planes, the astral realms, and dragons came into my life at that point as well. So that was very exciting. I did a lot of dragon rituals, and I was just meditating and seeing these dragons everywhere, and I had all this dragon energy around me, and that was amazing. But I got made redundant from my job as well, all of a sudden, and my husband was very wanted me to be normal, and he knew that I wasn't normal when I met him. You know, he knew I was on this spiritual path when I met him.
Right. So when he found out about the dragons, that was...
Yeah, he found out about the dragons and the other stuff, and I was going into that. I was going into a space with myself where I was far more, I just was a sponge. I just wanted more information, feeding my soul, feeding my brain, feeding my body, feeding my spiritual self just with information, joining groups, you know, joining others, doing a lot of collective stuff. I just felt it was time for me to go back fully into my spiritual life, because I felt at points I'd kind of parked it for a while, you know, and it was now time for me.
Right.
And that was absolutely the beginning of the end of my marriage. Absolutely. Just in a sense that I changed so rapidly. So apart from the menopause and everything else, and I was coming out of that, I think...
No, I have to say, your poor husband.
My poor husband, you know, and I know he was kind of going, "Oh, I'm going to get my wife back now. You know, I'm going to get my wife back."
Poor thing. He just doesn't know what happened.
He didn't know what hit him, bless him, and that was it. You know, that was it. It was just...
He couldn't take anymore. Understand?
Yeah, he couldn't take anymore. He couldn't take anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you know,
those of us that are considered, you know, we're starseeds, but you know, some of us relate to being witches at the same time. You know, when you're married to a witch, I mean, you're going to go through the entire life cycle. You're going to feel everything. Yeah, there's no holding back. And I'm not saying witch like Wicca. I'm just saying witch like the experience of being in your alchemy and just in your magic, you know.
Yeah.
So,
and I couldn't hold that back, you know. And I was at home for a little while until I really started getting into my own spiritual work, you know, in a deeper way. And I'd always dabbled and done bits and pieces, but I was really like, I'm ready now, and I'm ready to put my work out into the world, and I have lots to give and lots to contribute. So I'm ready. I feel practiced enough, with enough knowledge, information, and a skill set that I can now work with. And he freaked out, you know. He was just, "I just want you to be normal." And I'm like, I can't be normal. I can't be normal. I have to be in this world.
right.
And I actually can't be who you want me to be. So either you're going to have to accept it or join in.
Right.
But I can't be who you want me to be. And sadly, you know, I'd be at home, I'd be doing a bit of work at home, whatever, and go and get the kids and sort all that stuff out. But I remember beginning to dread his key coming in the door when he was coming in from work, which was really sad.
Yeah.
And I remember just thinking, oh God, he's going to come home in a minute. And nothing really disastrous happened in our marriage. We just, you know, pulled apart.
Right.
But I remember that. I remember one day the key going in the door and just thinking, oh, I really don't want him to come home now. And that for me, it was...
a woman goes through when you feel that way about your partner, and we know the difference if it's temporary or if it's more serious than that you actually really don't want him to come home. But it's not dramatic. It's more like you're finished.
You're
like,
finished, done.
Finished.
And I didn't know how to finish that because I felt quite vulnerable as well. Mm-hmm. I wasn't in my full power. I was beginning to explore and evolve and put myself out in the world in a different way. But I also felt very, very vulnerable.
Were you starting to feel any sexuality or sensuality at all during that time?
No.
No, because you were focused on the metaphysical, the spiritual. It was very ethereal, esoteric. That's understandable.
Totally, 100%.
Right.
And the only way I felt probably, say, sensual was as a mother.
Yes.
You know, that nurturing part of myself as a mother. I've taken the one thing that I feel I've really done, I've done lots of things well, but I've done a brilliant job with my kids as a mother. And I'm very proud of that. And it's that moon in Cancer, you know, that real mothering, that real mothering, because I've got sons.
Sign.
I've got sons, yeah. I'm an earth sign, but I've got sons. And I feel as a woman to have sons instead of having I have my beautiful niece who I'm incredibly close with, my sister's daughter. So I love that. And we have a great relationship. And she's very open and awake as well, which is wonderful. But I have sons, and I took that really seriously. You know, I'm Virgo, so I took it very seriously. And, you know, I thought, hang on a minute, I'm bringing men in. I've brought men into the world, but boys into the world.
Deal.
It's a big deal. Have you got sons?
I have one oldest, but I was 18 when I had him. Then I had 4 daughters after. And so by the time I caught up to the idea that I was a mother and I had something to do with my son, it was like he was 10 or 12 and it was too late. So he was the one that got away. I didn't get a chance to do any like work on him and be who I wanted to be with him. So what I had to do is rebuild a relationship from scratch and get to know him. It was almost like siblings because we grew up together. So we got to know each other, and then I had to earn his respect and earn his trust again. And then now we're good friends, and now he loves me. But I had to start all over because I was too young and I didn't know what I was doing.
And I've got friends who had kids your age, when, you know, around the age you have as well. And then people I know that have had children much older, and those relationships are very different, aren't they? I've really seen that. You know, like you were saying, you feel like you grew up with him, you know, and
yeah, he remembers my 23rd birthday. I mean, that's really young. Yeah, so he works. He's like a designer for origami with NASA. He makes the solar panels for, you know, the space missions. And I had to learn how to go find him, and because he couldn't relate to me, there was nothing we had in common. He didn't really understand the esoteric spiritual aspects of my life. And so I had to go into his world and see if I can find him there, which was very technical. And he was part of the reason why I wrote that book, I Am AI. And that was because I wanted to see if I can speak the language of my son, which is science. So
amazing.
That was how I found a way to connect and find him. And he respected the effort of talking quantum mechanics with him.
That's amazing.
He laughs at me a lot, but he appreciates the effort and that I get most of it pretty accurate. And he doesn't understand how I did it without a school degree, but that's what happens when you become a shaman and you do a lot of plant medicine journeys.
We just get downloaded that information anyway, don't you? You just get downloaded what you need to know. Yeah.
I cheated.
Yeah, we just get downloaded information.
Right.
You know, I know that I've definitely, you know, certainly all along my journey, I've been downloaded information or blocks of information or things. And people are like, how do you know that? I'm going, I've just been told it, or I just know it's fine, you know.
Right.
Even if I can't explain it, you know, you just,
It comes in your dream state also.
It comes in my dream. Yes, of course it does. It comes in your dream state, doesn't it? And you're uploading it the next day, as it were, or it's filtering in its own way through, you know, your brain and your software, as it were, and eventually it comes out in another way, doesn't it? Or you feel like you've had an epiphany, or it's like, or a aha moment.
That's right.
And there it is. You know, oh, hang on a minute, I've got information about that.
So let me jump ahead to, when did you start to regain the idea that you are a sensual and sexual being? When did that start?
My marriage ended. When my marriage ended.
Oh, it's so horrible.
Yeah, when my marriage ended.
And then he gets to say, "Oh, great, now it starts."
Yeah,
when I'm out of the picture.
yeah.
Wow.
I've really enjoyed that. I took a really, really deep dive when he left. And because I'd held on for so long and it was so painful.
Mm.
And I knew I had enough knowledge, enough information at that point, you know, and I was 53. So I'd come out of menopause and I was recovering from all that stuff, and I started losing all my weight and everything else. You know, I was coming back to myself slowly before he left, and I was doing my work, and I joined forces with a friend of mine who I still work with now because I'm a grid worker. So we do a lot of this earth-based energy work, and then I have one-to-one clients. But so I was already obviously on my way and working and absolutely beginning to really live my purpose, as it were. But when he left, I knew I had to do a really deep dive, all right? And I mean, really deep dive. And I knew that everything that I'd held on to for at least the last 5 years of my marriage, I had to unpeel in the deepest way that I could allow myself to. And I spent 3 months with this amazing shamanic healer. And we did blocks of healing. And so I did my current life, which was all of my current life with Phil, just unpeeling layers. And I had to do a ritual every day and say a prayer and do a couple of things around that. And the minute I would evoke that prayer and the minute I would do my ritual, I would sob. So I spent the first 3 weeks of that unpeeling literally, you know, on the kitchen floor at night, kids are in bed and I'm sobbing. And you know, those heart-based, really racking sobs, if when you really let go, you know,
Yes.
it's like, I feel like I'm gonna have,
I call them
yeah,
the soul cries.
the soul cries.
Crying.
Yes, the soul cries. And you know that, and it's so painful, isn't it, to open up the heart chakra and the throat chakra as well, and allow all of this stuff to come out that I've been holding on to for so long. And I know so many people go through that as well. And you know,
I want to make a note here that earth signs have a tendency to get through this faster, this stage of opening the heart chakra, because we feel very connected to the earth and we feel very supported by the earth. But I've met many water signs and earth air signs that are absolutely terrified, or fire signs that come right to the precipice of having a heart opening or a chakra opening, and it's just absolutely terrifying because they don't know what's going to happen to them. Yeah.
And it's painful and it hurts. It physically hurts. You know, I lost my father when I was 25. He died. So he's the first major loss that I'd had. And I did a lot of grieving for him, very much heart-based grieving for him. But this grief of my marriage that I had to go through as well and let go of, and it was a relationship of nearly 18 years. And just that pain, I really remember just sobbing on the floor one night so hard. I thought, I'm going to have a heart attack. You know, I really thought I was going to have a heart attack. It was so painful. But the next day, I felt so light. I felt so open for the first time in what felt maybe all my life or for a long time. You know, that was very powerful. And then after that, I did my past life and lots and lots of past lives that were caught up with my husband as well. And they needed deleting, and also delved into my ancestral line.
Right.
Yeah.
I said or completing. You said deleting, and I said or completing.
Yes, or
completing those cycles, those past life cycles. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was a deep dive. That was a really, really massive deep dive. And it went, very powerful. And I knew I had to do it. And I can remember just conversing with the universe and saying, okay,
that's it.
I'm in service.
Right.
That's it. Here I am.
Here I am.
I'm open.
I have nothing else left, so you might as well take me.
Honestly, exactly how I felt. I just thought, okay, I'm here now.
Yeah. What more? And
yeah.
And it's like when you squeeze a lemon and the effervescence comes out and you smell the aroma.
Yeah.
When you get squeezed like that in life, you know, you get to that point,
Yeah.
and you have this moment where the effervescence, your essence comes through.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
what, so you had your awakening. That's your big, I would consider that your big second ascension. Your first one was in 2010, probably was the beginning of it.
Yeah.
But your major of ascension in service as a healer, that's probably where it got more serious. Yeah.
Actually, I think the first one that I really experienced was my father dying.
Right. You know, I was 25 when my father passed. And crossed over. It was a sudden heart attack, and I had no chance to say goodbye or anything. I was the only child. He was my biggest influence, and I grieved for 5 years, and I went actually crazy a few times. So I ended up having to like go on those mood. What do they call those? I can't think of it. Changes your mood. Those little pharmaceuticals. And I had to go on that for a short time because I didn't understand how I was going to function on the planet. I didn't know why he left. And I'm very grateful now that I'm married to a psychic medium, because I was able to really understand from lots and lots of sessions my husband has channeled him. I had closure, but then I also learned how to communicate to him directly.
Yeah.
So I have a great relationship with him now. I think he gets kind of bored of me because I talk to him almost too much. So now he's off doing something else, probably in a different planet somewhere. So.
Oh my God, we've got parallel stories.
We have a lot of parallels. 2010.
We have parallel stories. Well,
so I was a year too. That's when it all started for me.
Yeah. So well, we do.
My first awakening, 2010.
Wow. So I was 25 when my father died. He died of a sudden heart attack.
No.
He dropped dead.
Same.
He dropped dead. Yeah.
Same. Oh my gosh. No wonder we feel this kinship.
And I can remember actually going to see him when he was lying in the chapel of rest. And I remember my stepmother saying to me, don't go in there, it'll freak you out. And I'm thinking, no, it's fine. Because my sister had actually found him dead, and so he was still warm and everything else. But I hadn't seen him, and I hadn't seen him for several months. And I thought, I've got to go and see him. If I don't go and see him.
5 months. I hadn't seen him.
Yeah, roughly the same. And I hadn't seen him, and I'd spoken to him about then a month before he died. And I thought, I've got to go and see him, because if I don't go and see him, I'm not going to believe he's dead. And I remember going to see him in the chapel of rest, and he was laid out and everything, and he just looked like a waxwork dummy. Yes. And I can remember absolutely freaking out. I did exactly that. I freaked out and screamed, but I knew then it was one of those awakening moments of, we are a spirit in a body. And the body is just this vessel that's left behind. Oh my God. So I was having an epiphany moment in the chapel of rest, because it really stayed with me. It was so immense. And then, like you, I grieved for 5 years before
5 years too.
5 years.
Yeah, because there's no warning. And I was so angry for the first 3 years. And I didn't get enough time,
And sad. And it's sad.
And he worked a lot too, so I didn't get a lot of time with him.
No. And I felt really sad. And I felt, he's not seeing who I've become as a woman. It felt really, really sad. Yeah. And the same as you. I have the best.
Watching you.
Yeah, I have the best relationship with him now. I'm like you, I talk to him all the time. It's like this.
He sends me music all the time. He sent me my husband. He sends me my friends and people I need to meet. He orchestrates a lot of things in my life. Yeah. And how I know it's him is we have these little, like probably with you, he has these things that I know it's just between us, the things I know that he would leave just for me, like phrases, symbols, songs, different, there's little things we know.
So, I had one last year with him. You just brought to mind something that happened to me last year. My electricity went off. I was dealing with some work stuff, and my electricity went off in my house, just boom. All the power went off in the house. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Why has all the power gone off? And I thought, I'll put it back on. And I did the thing in the fuse box and put it back on. Off it went again, boom. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. What's going on here? And because I work really deeply within the astral belt, the etherical world, etc., etc. And I know there's all sorts of things going on. So I thought, okay, there's someone here. What's going on? Why is this happening? I switched it all on again, and it went off again, and it happened 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
And just at that moment, my phone just rang, but
oh, that's true.
my friend phoned me, and she's my colleague that I work with doing my grid work. And she said, I just felt the need, I just thought I should phone you. Are you all right? And I said, oh my God, the electricity's gone off, like 3 times in a row. And she went, it's your dad. He needs to talk to you.
Oh my gosh.
Tune in, talk to him. So that, and I was going through a bit of a tricky bit in my divorce at that time. And she said, he wants to talk to you. You need to tune into him. So that was one of the biggest things I've had from him in recent years. But it was amazing. She knew straight away she was your dad. And I said, okay.
So the drum roll is going to be the last big sexual and sensual awakening, the one that you currently are in. So yes. Bring us to that moment. When did that occur?
So after I'd done that deep dive and going through all my stuff, it's just something that's evolved, I think. I don't feel like there's been a magic moment, but it's something that's just evolved. And
you start to feel different in your body. Let's start with that. Okay, that's what I'd like to talk about.
Yeah. I just started to feel really different in my body. I started to perhaps do some deeper meditations. I felt free for the first time in a long time as well, because I wasn't in I was on my own again.
Right.
And I really, really enjoyed that, because I'd been in a marriage that was unhappy for a long time, and I was unhappy, and I know my husband was unhappy. And that was really tough. And then to all of a sudden be on my own and be free. And after I'd done all my deep dives, I was like, wow, this is actually, I feel really good about this. I'm really going to start to, it was a conscious choice as well to say, okay, you know what? It's time to feel better. Yes. I want to feel better.
I like that you announce it that way. When you say to yourself, it's time to feel better. A lot of people don't realize that they're allowed to do that. To just announce it, like it's time. And I did the same similar thing. And I wanted to mention, when you're doing those meditations, what some people may not know is that you're actually activating all of your chakras, and you're connecting your awareness to all of your body. So you're literally lighting up your own internal grid. So then you really get to feel yourself. And that's where that sensuality, they call that like spiritual ecstasy. You start to feel your human body, but your spirit body, and you start to feel all of your different bodies internally. And it's kind of like a turn on, like you switch on a light. So you get turned on by spirit, turned on by life, turned on by yourself, turned on by your, just your stimuli around you, you're interfacing with your environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And environment's huge, isn't it, as well?
Yes.
I did, apart from doing a deep dive on me, I did a deep dive on my house as well.
Yes, that's important. You have to have you have to have a pod that you like. You have to have a place where you feel comfortable, that you can let your hair down. That's important.
And I decorated my bedroom. That was a key as well, to claim that space for me.
That's important.
It's so important. And I just thought, and I painted it pink. I've never had a pink room. No, I've done it in this really nice dusky pink, but I painted it pink, and I thought, I've never had a pink room in my life, nor have my sisters, it's just, we just never desired it. Right. So I've got this pink room with these lovely angels and lots of love hearts and love heart lights and things draped over my bed that had never done before.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, and so changing my environment made me feel better as well, apart from my own internal work. It just, I enjoyed going into my bedroom. It's like, I like it in here. It feels nice.
People,
I can put on my little lights.
People have a misunderstanding when they think that sexuality means that I'm being sensual and sexual for you, for the other person. Now, sometimes that other person, there could be another human being that activates that. And for sure, we have our soulmates and our twin flames that do that for us. But it's ultimately our own experience for ourselves. We're the ones that are benefiting. We're the ones getting all the juice.
Yeah.
You know? It's not for other
Exactly.
people, but
Yeah.
it is and it's not. Other people get to benefit.
Yeah.
I mean, our favorite heroes or icons or celebrities, people we love, are the ones that are very openly sensual with themselves. They're very openly in love with themselves. And those are the ones we admire the most.
Yeah.
Make love, not war. Obviously,
Yeah.
if you're in love, you're not in war.
It's so true. So true. And I felt such a connection to myself more in my bedroom, especially was huge. You know, just to go in that room, there's no male energy in there. You know, I've got a house of 2 boys, you know, 2 sons, they're still with me. And it was my spot to claim for me, no one else. You know, it's like, this is my space. And that was powerful as well, to really come into that space and feel good, you know. And I bought new bed sheets and all of that stuff, you know, to just feel really, really nice about myself.
I always talk about the bed sheets because I think that's one
Yeah,
of the most important things as you slip into your bed at night. If you don't feel luxurious or you don't feel that lovely feeling against your skin, that's your last moments awake, you know, before you go into your small death, they call it, the little death. No, I mean,
yeah.
it's just good to just give yourself that luxury.
So good, so
Yeah.
good, so good.
Okay, so when you go about your business and you go to the grocery store and you're going around town, how are you feeling when you're walking down the street and you talk to your friends and you're in your body? How do you feel?
Good. It's taken me, so I've been separated from Phil now for 3 years. So it's taken me really, that first year was just that unraveling process in a very deep way. And then I felt I was integrating myself again. And then in this last year, I mean, really up until now, I'm embodying it.
Yes.
More fully than I've ever done, you know. And I'm like, hey, I'm this.
You know what's interesting is I felt you coming through the Starseed group. I felt your energy because I feel that resonance of your it's kind of like a sultriness that you have with yourself. it's like a
I'm
sultry,
loving it.
a sultriness, and I would feel that in your comments, and I loved it.
Thank you.
It's so delicious to see somebody who is experiencing themselves like that. You just want to play with them. You want to have fun with them and say, yes, let's see more of that. You know, what else do you have? It's like a candy shop to come inside and come play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've actually realized I used to be like that a lot when I was younger, because what's been interesting is when I've had a couple of friends of mine who've known me for years and years and years, you know, pre-marriage, pre-husband, and they've come to see me now post-husband and said, oh my God, you know, you're like you were like 20 years ago. Oh my God, you look amazing. And what's happened? And I'm like, okay, I've done this deep dive and peeled off all this shit and I'm okay.
Oh, wow.
But I realized that I must have been like that when I was younger as well.
Right.
You know,
That's how I feel too. I feel like I'm back in my 20s.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about men for a second. Now, men have the same patterns, the same stages in different ways, and they have different hormones and their own menopause. They have their own, you know, they call midlife crisis and whatnot. And they also, I notice, is they hit 50 going onward, they also have a sexual resurgence. And they also have a wanting and desire to rekindle and relive their youth, and there's nothing wrong with that. People 100%. Have made fun of that over the years.
100%.
There's nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, when I see a man 50 and up that is actively in their sensuality, I am so happy for them.
Yeah. It's very attractive.
Very attractive. Yeah, because they're very much in their vitality, and they're wanting to live life to the fullest, to the very last day. Why shouldn't they?
Yeah.
And
that's what happened to my husband. He hit 50 and he was like, I'm out of here.
Oh my God.
That's what happened. You know, my girlfriend who lives in Italy, she said to me, oh my God, he's like, thinks he's 23.
Yeah.
And he's just like, needs to go and get a motorbike or something, you know, and just kind of go, And he did. He freaked out. I know exactly what happened
Well,
to him.
I feel it's sad that people make fun of each other when we go through these stages. When I was younger, I used to hear all the jokes about what happens when you hit middle age and what happens when you hit menopause and, all this. And now that I'm here, I'm 47. And now that I'm starting to get here, my husband's 50, we look at this whole scenario completely different. And I said, wow, this, first of all, was very hormonal. That's number one. And then number two, this is a mindset. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to experience yourself in your sensuality and sexuality until your last breath. I mean, that's
amazing. I love it. I love it. I love myself more now than I've ever done.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like I feel like my dramas are over. I've come through this period. My children are growing up. One's 20, one's 16. And they don't need me around as much anymore. And so I don't have to do all that mummy stuff as well, which I really, really like. And so I'm enjoying that freedom in a different way as well. And I've really enjoyed that a lot. Yeah. And I just feel free to be me in the fullness that I've ever felt in my life. That is bliss.
I want to reiterate what you keep repeating the word free, and I want to keep pulling that out to the foreground because that's the key word here is sensuality and sexuality connected to freedom. It's the same vein. You're coming from the same place. That's why you feel sexual. That's why you feel sensual, because you feel free. And that's a very personal definition for everyone. What the definition of freedom is.
100%. 100%. And how can you, everyone will define that in a completely different way.
Totally. And it's so personal. And everybody has very specific little things that help them feel free. Like whenever I dance, in general, just dance, or if I'm dancing to like Madonna, I know how you feel about, I think you're the one that doesn't like Madonna. But that's my era. So when I listen to certain songs and I'm dancing, I forget my age instantly. And I immediately am back in the 80s again. And it's so fun. And I think to myself, this is what life is about. If I can't do this, then I'm in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope that this conversation has been some sort of lid that had been lifted off of this conversation for others, because there's people who feel trapped and they feel very like stifled in their relationship with people and themselves. They don't feel like they can be themselves. And it takes courage and guts, but I'm so glad, Nicky, that you shared your journey, because people can see the steps that it takes, the stages, and not everybody has to do it in your stages. The timeline you did, I mean, they can do it all in their 20s if they want, but it's just the fact that you didn't give up on yourself. You stayed curious. You were studying and learning and seeing shamans and taking care of yourself, and you never quit until you finally got to the promised land. And so now you're here. Yeah.
I'm here.
You're here now.
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel there's still, it's the best yet to come. I don't know. It's here now. It's here now.
Here now, and the best is yet to come also. You can still be looking forward to that. So, Nicky, I just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You've been such a pleasure. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And you are so full of light and love, and it's so resonant. And I know everyone's going to feel it. So I just really appreciate you. And thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you. And it's such a blessing and a pleasure to meet you as well. And I love being in the Starseed community. Oh. When you popped up and I saw I'm a Pleiadian, I thought, oh, hello, who are you?
Hello. Something different here.
And I thought, oh, this is good. And then my next thought was, I'm in.
I'm in. Yeah, and she's referring to this group, United Starseed Connections. There's a lot of Starseed group, but this particular one is special because we're very tight community. We're very close, and we keep welcoming new members all the time, but we are very involved in each other's lives, and we do these interviews, we have podcasts, we have group discussions, we're going to have a dance party in 2 weeks. I'm hoping you're going to be front and center for.
I am definitely coming, darling. Absolutely.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll see you on the Starseed page. And Nicky, thank you so much. Namaste, sister.
Namaste.
Thank you for all your work.
Namaste, sister.
And you have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.